Welcome to the video. First video I've produced, so please bear with the quality. This is a somewhat sped up, I think it's 3 or 4 times, video of the assembly of the latest volcanic piece by Phoenix Terrain Systems. My name's Scott. Anyway, as you can see, it's just EPS foam. That's extruded polystyrene cut into semi-random pieces. The lowest layer is 1 inch thick. The second layer that I'm gluing small pieces onto right now, that's actually a piece of 2-inch foam. I know a lot of people have a lot of questions sometimes about the foam. Personally, I just get mine by the 4-foot by 8-foot sheet at a local store called Menards. I think the last time I purchased a 2-inch sheet was, I think it was only like $21 or $22. The 1-inch stuff, maybe $15 or $16. And I know they recently have a sale on 1/2 inch for $9.99. Need to go get some of that. Anyway, please feel free to post any comments or questions that you might have about any of the processes. Really, the only thing to look at this point in the build is kind of keep in mind where you want your lava flowing. So I decided that I should sketch it out a little bit. Have to confess, it'll probably change by the time it's done, but it's a good idea to get a good idea. One thing when gluing extruded polystyrene foam to extruded polystyrene foam using hot glue like I am in this video, keep in mind that if it's not a low temp gun, that you want to give it a little bit of cooling time before you start pressing stuff together. And the reason for that is that the high temp glue does have a tendency to melt a small cavity wherever it's put. This is how you mix the filler that I'll be using to texture everything. It's just pre-mixed, ready-made drywall filler. You'll see here in a moment or two, I'm going to add just a little bit of water. That's because for some reason the top of the filler hadn't quite sealed, so it started to dry a little bit. Normally I don't add any moisture to it, since it's pre-mixed. The sand that I'm using is just basic river sand. I'm lucky to live relatively close to the Mississippi, and there's a place where the local municipality has to dredge, and this is the stuff they pull up and use it for beach sand. Now, there's really no hard and fast rule as far as how thick this stuff should be, but personally I like it so that it doesn't flow, so it doesn't move around too much. The reason for that is well, number one, it sticks a little bit better. It's easier to manage. You don't have to worry about spills or anything like that. But then you can see here, most of the texture that comes from making a hill like this or a volcano like this is generated by a stippling motion. Now, if you're not familiar with what that term is, I know many of you are, but if you're not, stippling is basically a stabbing motion that you make with your brush. And what it does when you do that kind of action to this type of material, it actually kind of, in all honesty, acts like frosting on a cake. So, which is another reason why not to add too much moisture to pre-mixed filler. It's already pretty thick. If you look closely there, you can pause the video if you want, or just look where I'm pointing. You'll see that there are some peaks that get pulled up, little bits of texture. So I'm going to do a little bit of the mini mountain / volcano over texture right now, and then skip ahead. Oh, a word about putting the foam together. There's really no such thing as too much. Most of the lines are going to get covered up by the filler and the texture that's inside the filler, the sand. So add a whole bunch of little pieces. You can see if you go back to the beginning of the video, before I mixed the texture, I've added a lot more. It just seemed like it wasn't very natural. Actually, none of this looks natural, of course. I mean, it's wall plaster filler, drywall filler, put on top of pink foam, put on top of MDF-like base. So yeah, no such thing as realism right now. All right, I've covered almost the entire board, and this is to show not just the back of my hand. I guess I didn't realize that I was blocking the entire piece. But it's to show how to pull the texture out to the edge of the board. Something like this, there's no reason to leave bare MDF. No flock is going to be put on this. It's all going to be rock, stone, volcanic, hellish nightmare type of thing when it's done. When you're putting this filler on top of the extruded polystyrene, it's really easy at this stage when it's this stiff. By stiff, I mean it will hold the points. The points will hold when you stipple the filler. It will draw, when you pull the brush back, it'll draw it into a little point. That's what I was kind of talking about, how it acts like a cake, cake frosting. If you've ever made a cake or enjoyed a cupcake of any kind, take a second to look at it, and there's going to be some points on it. Anyway, that's what's going on when you stipple. If you move the filler around and you stipple at angles, then it's going to cover up all the edges of the polystyrene foam, so that once it's painted and once everything gets completed on it, you won't even realize that there's polystyrene foam inside of it. Which is a lot of the times when you see people build hills, it's very easy to see that it's polystyrene sheet foam, because you can see the division between the layers. Oh, also, I've tried, and this will come up in the next video also, but I've tried tinting this stuff before, and it doesn't seem to dry very well. When it does dry, it's incredibly brittle, but that'll be covered later. This is just to make sure that a larger base miniature is going to actually be able to stand on different places. That's an Eldar wraithlord. Anyway, thanks for watching. Check out the Facebook page. Good night.